For a more in-depth look at the Iraq conflict, I'm joined now by Mike Lyons. He's a retired U.S. Army major and a senior fellow with the Truman National Security Project. Heartbreaking stories coming from northern Iraq. You just heard the story. Sean Caleb sent me an email earlier today saying that some of the stories he's hearing from these victims of the Islamic State, hauntingly sad. You heard that woman saying you can smell the death. You can see the bodies of children scattered there on Mount Sinjar. Did the U.S. wait too long to help, you think?
You know, the U.S. only supplied air power initially. It was unfortunately a decision by the Peshmerga forces that had to have an economy of force mission to go back and defend their city. They were left with a very much a devil's choice, and they weren't able to defend. The United States air power wasn't going to keep some of that from happening. It would have taken boots on the ground in order to prevent some of the genocide we've seen.
Mike, we heard U.S. President Barack Obama talking about the retaking of the Mosul Dam at a news conference today, saying if that dam was breached, it would have been catastrophic. How important is this development?
Yeah, very strategic on a couple of levels. First, it shows the Peshmerga and the Iraqi security forces can defeat ISIS, especially in coordination with the American airstrikes. Those American strikes kept the ISIS forces from reinforcing and kept momentum on the Peshmerga side. Secondly, had that been destroyed, you would have seen a catastrophic result down potentially into Baghdad, humanitarian type of crisis that the world hasn't seen. So I think it's really important that they did that.
It's interesting, Iraq's fugitive Sunni Vice President Tariq al-Hashimi says that the U.S. airstrikes will do nothing to end the sectarian violence in Iraq. He calls it short-sighted. He said they shouldn't concentrate on Sunni extremists. They should take into account Shia extremists as well. Do you think he has a point?
You know, I think it's going to be important that this new Iraqi government brings Sunnis into the fold as quickly as possible. The U.S. can't look like it's just the Air Force for what's a sectarian military right now. It can't just support the existing Iraqi government. So I think that it's going to be important that the new government gets on its legs quickly and brings the Sunnis into the fold.
Let me ask you a little bit about ISIS, because you've talked a little bit about it. On the Heat earlier, Anna Naidu was speaking to an expert on Islam. He was very dismissive of ISIS, describing them as a ragtag adventurers. And then he went on to say they're nobodies. Is he right, or are they really a significant threat?
Well, they have equipment. They have certain power right now. They were able to overtake what was a very weak Iraqi security force to the north. But conventionally, if they stay in the fight they're in right now, they're going to be defeated, especially if you bring in U.S. air power. If the conventional forces of the Peshmerga and the Iraqi security forces get their stuff together and coordinate their attacks, they likely are very defeated. Now, their only hope is to turn to guerrilla tactics, turn to what we saw insurgents did back when the United States was in Iraq and continue to rain terror. But other than that, they likely are easily defeated.
Now, Mike, you're talking about U.S. air power, but I've heard from a lot of military folks that it's not enough, that there need to be boots on the ground. Obviously, that is not an avenue that U.S. President Barack Obama wants to go down. But do you agree?
No, the air power will right now at least prevent ISIS from taking more territory. However, it won't roll back to their current border right now in Iraq. I think that there's enough men on the ground between the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmergas. There's enough to make this an Iraqi ground force issue. I think U.S. forces right now introduced there, it would have to be something catastrophic. It would have to be a humanitarian mission, for example. But I just don't see U.S. forces being involved in the fight.
As a retired U.S. Army major, what are you looking for? What would be a defining moment, or what would be critical steps militarily looking forward to seeing this thing end?
I think rolling back ISIL positions right now is important. Establishing, let's say, no vehicle zones in certain areas. I'd like to see us go after these convoys that are in the wide open, perhaps even attacks into Syria so ISIL can't reinforce some success they've had right now. But once you see them being rolled back into Syria, then we've at least corrected the problem in Iraq, and then we have to take care of it in Syria.
So you would support strikes in Syria as well?
I would. I think strategically, that's where they'll be reinforced from. So from a military perspective, you wouldn't want to see that happening. We might be able to use that air power to get deep into their rear area of operations and then keep them from reinforcing, encircle them now, and defeat them really where they stand.
Retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons joining us from New York. Thank you.